So we've got WR125X Supermoto 2016. We're just doing an oil change on it. We thought we'd show you through how we do that here at Charlie's Motorcycles. A couple of things we've got out. We've got the 141 oil filter, 19mm socket on a bar. The oil filter housing's an 8mm T-bar. We've got the blue roll, just over a litre of oil and standard coffee. So we're just warming it up now, get the temperature up to around 90-95 degrees by the water temperature sensor. So it's using a laser sight temperature sensor here just to check that the engine's up to temperature. We like to drain the oil out when it's nice and hot, so it's nice and thin and flows out quickly. And just remove the oil filler cap and dipstick. And I've got my 19mm socket to crack off the sump plug. And just be mindful of the spring forcing the strainer up into the engine, it doesn't fly out on you. And remove the strainer and the spring and the sump plug. Just having a little inspect, make sure there's no metal filings or anything abnormal in the strainer. This one looks really good. It's a very low mileage bike we've got on the bench here, 2,000 miles only. Now you can see the thin hot oil there is drained out pretty quickly. We've nearly got all of it out in the first instance. So just using the 8mm T-bar, break off the 3 bolts that hold the oil filter housing cover on. 2 small ones, and then there is a long one at the front of the bike which runs through into the crankcases. Just having a little inspect inside the oil filter housing cover there. It's got a rubber O-ring, make sure it's not been nipped or trapped, and just using my little finger I extract the old oil filter. It's quite dirty, but it's not too bad. I've seen a lot worse on the bikes that come through the shop. Just having a little clean down. Next thing we do is we stand the bike up to drain the oil out of the oil filter housing. And also it allows more oil to drain from the sump. I rock the bike backwards and forwards a few times just to get any excess oil to flow out. It's always nice to get as much oil out as you can when you're doing one of these oil changes on these small 125s. See a little bit more oil just draining out. It's nice to get a paper towel and just clean inside the oil filter housing to remove as much as you can. You can see inside there's a little bit of surplus oil, but it's a lot cleaner than what it was. New filter there in the left hand. I always make sure we oil the rubber surfaces, the sealing surfaces of the oil filter. Not too much, just moisten it. Go and inspect, make sure that it's inserted the right way around with a hole to the outside of the bike, and the oil filter housing cover has a peg that fits into that. I start by putting the bolts back in, just finger tight, ready to be torqued to 10 Newton meters on these 8mm fasteners. Just spinning them in with the T-bar, just to seat the O-ring down. Now just get the torque wrench and set it to 10 Newton meters. Just easily go around and lightly tighten them up to spec. And this front one takes a few more degrees because it's a longer, stretchier bolt. There you go. Just taking some brake cleaner, cleaning off the sump plug and the strainer. Bit of compressed air just to make sure there's no debris or anything remaining before it gets installed back on the bike. I use a bit of engine oil just to lubricate the rubber O-ring that's on the sump plug cap itself. Got to pay attention to the orientation of the strainer. Goes on top of the spring, and then the spring in the cap, and just wind it in with my fingers. 32 Newton meters on the sump plug on these bikes. Quite a fine thread, and it comes quite abruptly to a stop. Filling the oil. The marker shows a litre capacity. We usually find they take a little bit more to get the dipstick level right. I like to get a litre in and run the bike up just to get oil flowing round into the oil filter before checking it for a second time. Check the oil, just put the dipstick in, don't screw it in, just push it into the engine, and then I stand it up onto its tyres. Just make sure that it sits flush against the engine casing. It's balancing on its own as the bike, and set it down. Check the level should be up to the mark. They're usually not after you've run them for the first time, as the oil's gone into the oil filter, so she needs a little top up. I've just got the bike running now, so we tidy the tools away. Just having a quick inspect around the oil filter housing, make sure there's no leaks. Check the sump plug for leaks. She all looks good. So just a second check of the oil. And as expected, just on the bottom of the dipstick, it needed another neck full of oil just to bring it up to level. There you can see. So just a final check. And it's bang up to the mark at the notch at the top of the dipstick. So I'll screw it back in. Final clean down of the dipstick itself, and that's the oil change done on this WR.